Hi, everyone. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Doing good, good. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. My name is Kelly Smith, and I am a social worker and program analyst with Military Community Support Programs. And this is your COVID-19 update. Now, some of you guys may be familiar with the Military Community and Family Policy Relationships Campaign. We've had several different promotions and information around support for your relationship. Now, and also over the last few months, we have focused on the number one challenge addressed through counseling with Military One Source and the Military and Family Life Counseling Program, and that's relationship issues. It's something that many, if not all of us, have experienced in our lives. We have partnered with several stakeholders in the military community to talk about how to best support military couples. And we know that relationship issues are also a contributing factor in suicide in the military. Now, today I am joined by my colleague from the Uniformed Services University, Ms. Lauren Messina. Lauren, can you please tell us, our viewers, a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. So my name is Lauren Messina, and I work with the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine in support of the Consortium for Health and Military Performance, or CHAMP for short. And CHAMP is a center of excellence at the Uniformed Services University. At CHAMP, my role is as the Director of Human Performance Optimization Education, and I work with the Human Performance Resources by CHAMP team. And I'm also a licensed couple and family therapist. And so I've done that work in different clinical settings for the past 11 years, both working with military families and couples and civilian families and couples. So I'm really glad to be here today to talk with you about relationships and breakups and infidelity, because it's something that's really near and dear to my heart. I will say that what I'll talk about today are my own opinions and do not reflect the official positions or policies of the Uniformed Services University, the Department of Defense, or the Henry Jackson Foundation.
So, Lauren, over the last year, we know that the world has experienced a myriad of challenges, hardships, transitions, but then there's also been some positive. There has been some growth during the pandemic in many aspects of people's lives. I personally, myself, when it comes to romantic relationships, have witnessed romantic relationships, marriages, be challenged in ways like we have never seen before. And unfortunately, I've also seen a few friends that have separated or have taken a break from their significant other. And, that's been very hard and difficult on folks. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Breakups and how to recover and get through a tough breakup. But in your view, Lauren, can you help our viewers understand breakups and why they can be impactful to go through?
Yeah, absolutely. I've, witnessed some of the same things both in my clinical work and just in my personal life that you said. And I think just it's important to first kind of take a step back and acknowledge the really general but important way that relationships impact our well-being. So I think, despite the fact that maybe we've all had to embrace our inner introvert through COVID and we've been somewhat isolated, we still are inherently social beings. And we know that having close social relationships is really vital to health and well-being. So folks who have close relationships, who have strong family relationships, who are connected to others on duty or in their community, they're physically healthier, right? So those meaningful social ties can have an impact on our physical health. Folks who have those strong relationships are likely to have better cardiovascular health, lower blood pressure, and less inflammation. So it's really interesting to think of the connection between our relationships and our physical health. They also tend to recover from injury and illness quicker. Stronger relationships matter for your health just as much as things like losing weight, getting active, sleeping, and stopping smoking. So you can tell it's something that I personally and Champ very passionate about. And we know that the reverse is also true. So people who don't have much social connection, who experience loneliness, who don't feel supported by the folks around them, they report more health problems. So at a high level, we know that in some sense, a breakup can really impact our feelings of isolation and loneliness versus that benefits of feeling connected and closeness. And then if we think about this in a military context, for service members, the loss of a partnership and a relationship could be really particularly difficult, having to manage that along with the really stressful and high demands of military life. But we know that, in reality, breaking up it's normal, right? It's a common part of life. It's a common part of the cycles of relationships. And so that's why it's really, essential to try to find some healthy ways to cope with a breakup. And remember that it doesn't have to be all bad, that it's normal for there to be moments of sadness and anger at the end of a relationship. But breaking up can be good when it's viewed as a learning experience and an opportunity for self-growth.
Lauren, listening to you talk through that piece there makes me really think about some of the trends that we see when it comes to relationships. And I think nowadays people are getting married a little bit later on in life. Folks want to explore their career or get really settled in their career, or connect with each other a bit more before actually getting married. There are some military specific considerations. A lot of our service members nowadays are young. And there are a lot of stressors that the military life can have on relationships. We are all very familiar with them, whether it's long separation, frequent moves, deployments, all of that can really impact a relationship. And God forbid, you and your partner are going through some hard times. It can be really stressful to try to figure out and navigate that with the up tempo of a military lifestyle. Lauren, what do you think are some other additional factors that go into a breakup?
For sure. So, there's no real clean cut way to tell if a relationship is going to last or not. And there's a lot of things that can potentially play a role in leading to a relationship ending. I think some of the big things to keep in mind, if you're at this point of your relationship ending, or trying to process a breakup, is that, at the beginning, I think different goals, right? Different and going through personal changes is such a big piece of a couple realizing that the relationship isn't going to end.
Yeah.
In my experience, so much of a relationship working is timing, right? Two people need to want the same thing at the same point in their life, and they have to meet at that point, and everything has to jive. And so I think often relationships end because you come to this point where you realize you just want different things, or you're moving in different directions. And that is a struggle, right? It absolutely, and it can be heartbreaking. But I think objectively kind of looking, that maybe it's not something that each person is specifically doing. It's just that you're moving in different directions, you want different things, can be helpful for somebody, again, trying to take that lens of self-growth through a breakup. I also think, a lack of connection certainly often fuels the end of a relationship. Whether you don't feel like you have the same interests anymore, you're not necessarily feeling like there's a high level of engagement or fun in the relationship. Maybe you're struggling emotionally or physically with being intimate with one another. So a break in emotional closeness and a breakdown in communication can also be a really strong factor leading to a breakup. And then I think a big contributor sometimes is an incident that can be really emotionally damaging, what we in the couples therapy community call an attachment injury. So an attachment injury is an emotional wound that happens in an intimate and interdependent relationship. It usually happens after a real big breach of trust, right? So particularly at a time or a moment when there is like a loss or a transition. A common example of an attachment injury might be if there's an incidence of cheating or infidelity in a relationship. Attachment injuries can be overcome, but they take a lot of work and a lot of commitment.
Yeah, Lauren, we have a comment on Facebook from Catherine who said that maturity is also a big factor, and she really is spot on. Sometimes when someone and their partner are not on the same page when it comes to their values, their views, how they go about living their life, that could definitely impact the relationship. But I do want to sidetrack for a moment since you brought up infidelity. Now that in my experience in working with military families, is something that is very taboo. We don't openly talk about it. But what I have seen in my work, whether it's within this role here or within the family advocacy program prior, is that it is common among couples, and that includes couples within the military. They are not exempt from having to deal with that attachment injury of like infidelity or for cheating. Whether that infidelity is sexual in nature or if it's emotional or even financial, there's trail which can be really damaging to a relationship. As you mentioned, this can be very traumatic for the couple together as one, or it can be very traumatic for each party within the couple. One person may have a very difficult time getting over that infidelity, and it really requires a lot of work and self reflection to kind of get through that. But you have to be very intentional about it, and you have to both be on the same page about what the next steps are. What is the way ahead going to be for me and my partner? But in some cases, it may be an agreement to go your separate ways. Lauren, what else should we think about around infidelity in relationships?
For sure. I think, you highlighted I think the term attachment injury can be really helpful in thinking about this, because as an injury, it's going to keep opening up. It's going to keep losing. It's going to keep hurting unless you really work to heal it. Right. And so that's, as you're saying, Kelly, that like really concerted time and energy and effort to mend this if you decide to stay in the relationship. But even if the relationship ends, you can still hold on to that attachment injury as an individual. And you'll still probably need to put some energy and effort into healing that piece of yourself so that you can enter into the next relationship without that wound still hurting, right? And then, you mentioned a couple pieces about, the nature of infidelity being somewhat subjective, that it's ultimately up to the couple to determine what is that boundary and what constitutes cheating for us? Because for some people, it's sex. For others, it's more about secrecy. And for some, it's really just about the emotions, right? And where your spouse or partner is putting their time, their energy, their emotional efforts. So within the couple unit, really being able to define the boundaries of what is our relationship from start to finish, and what is okay to happen within the context of us as a couple versus what's okay to share with people outside of our relationship. And then keeping those conversations going, because it's not just enough to kind of establish that at the beginning of a relationship. You have to keep coming back to it over time. And certainly, down the road, even if you've been together years and years. And then knowing that if an infidelity does happen, that it's likely, best to address it in phases. That at first, the initial impact for many folks is kind of like a crisis mode, and you've got to cope with that in and of itself. And then later down the line, you can really look more reflectively at your own feelings, explore how you as a couple got there, what each of your role was, and taking responsibility. That it's everybody plays a role in a relationship. There's both parties contribute to some extent to a potential, disconnection. And so being able to really think about what could I have done differently, or what do I want to do differently in my next relationship to make sure that I don't end up here again, and trying to figure out what that path forward might look like, whether it's staying together or going your separate ways.
Lauren, you make a good point. When you mentioned about having that conversation over and over again, essentially having a conversation, obviously at the start of the relationship, but then throughout the relationship, having that conversation over and over again is such a huge takeaway for me, because I know in my relationship, my partner and I have changed over the years, and we continue to change. And so that conversation every time of what those boundaries look like, it changes. And so it's important to continue to talk about it. And so when, any type of attachment injury might come up, and it's not just, inclusive of infidelity or cheating, but any type of attachment injury comes up, then we can still have that conversation again and again. But I want us to go back to talking about the conversation of breakups, because we know infidelity is just one piece that might impact a breakup. But what can people expect after a breakup? Because, it's real hard when you're in it, but you've got to, at some point, see the light at the end of the tunnel. So what can people expect after the breakup?
Yeah, sure. So, everybody's reaction is likely to be different. Some folks might feel like they can move on pretty quickly, and others really get stuck in that place of, of hurt, maybe feeling lonely. Breakups aren't always clean. They're sometimes not even definite, right? And sometimes it's
Yeah.
not clear to know, yes, this is over, and now I have to, plan for what my future without this person is going to look like. So, it's hard to say this is what it's definitely going to be like. You might have to expect a few different things, but definitely knowing what to expect so that you can avoid a downward spiral, and think about how can I come out stronger from this is important. So I would say at the forefront, strong emotions are likely to be a part of a breakup. You might feel grief, confusion, anger, sadness, anxiety, and that loneliness too. You might feel all of these things at once. They might come piece by piece. You also might really feel like a big loss of confidence, and that can be really hurtful, in and of itself. Questioning, well, who am I without this person, right? Or what's wrong with me that they didn't want to stay in this relationship. But you also could feel some positive emotions too. And so it's normal that you feel strong emotions and that you feel them with some frequency. So I think that that's, a common expectation. And then also to consider that along with a breakup, other relationships that you have might change, right? If you felt like being in this relationship with my partner, we had a friendship network built around it, and all of that's going to change potentially. Or if you're, in a relationship with children and it's leading to a divorce type situation, that can obviously have an impact on the kids. Some might drift, other relationships might actually get closer, right? When one door opens, when one door closes, another door opens. And so maybe some other relationships can actually become deeper and stronger. And then, broader, I think it's also important to consider that other areas of your life could change as impact of the breakup. So if you were living with your partner, maybe your financials are entangled. So your living situation could change, your financial situation could change. And then, your day-to-day routine is also potentially likely to change too, depending upon how long you were in this relationship, how close you were to the person. So it's important to really be aware that these changes are possible so that you can really try to take a step back and tackle them one at a time.
So let's talk about coping a little bit. Breaking up can be a positive experience in time. So I have to really stress that in time piece, because I know for some folks, right away it is you're in the thick of it. Like Lauren said, you're experiencing that grief, that loss, that hurt. But in time, it might be a chance for you to change some of your habits, do some new things that you didn't get to do before where you were in the relationship. Or you may have more time to work on your relationships with your friends or your family members. You can be a bit more intentional about that. Another option may be to, build your independence and your self-esteem. Really take some time to do some work within yourself. It may require you working with a counselor or talking with a close friend about your own strength within and your own self-independence and self-esteem. And you may have an opportunity to meet new people, expand your network. But something that I really want to stress here, we are resilient people. It's deep within us. We're resilient. And sometimes you have to extend yourself some grace. So think about breakups, after you get through some of that hurt or as you're working through the hurt, that can also be a positive experience in time. Lauren, what else can people do to cope with breakups?
For sure. Yeah, those are great points for folks to keep in mind, to try to remember in the short term and certainly engage with in the long term. Yeah. And then I also think it's important to be aware of any temptations there might be to cope in unhealthy ways, right? And what are those, kind of default unhealthy ways that you might be likely to engage in, and how can you like you were saying, choose to do something different, choose to do something better this time around. So a healthy coping strategy might be, like you were mentioning, reaching out to family, friends, and deepening those relationships. Or, working on shifting your mindset, and whether you do that on your own or with a therapist or, with other resources that you could find on hprc-online.org, those are where we would ask you to try to focus. But the unhealthy coping habits are going to be things like overeating, reducing exercise or falling out of your routine of trying to stay fit, or even turning to drugs and alcohol. And then I think, trying to take a moment to consider focusing on yourself, right? And meeting your own needs. That this is a time where you can, like Kelly, you were mentioning, embrace that independence, and take accountability for understanding where you have control, and where, your healthy coping skills can really use some attention and energy to build upon. And doing that self-reflection that we were mentioning before can really be incredibly powerful and important as you move forward, to think about, what did I bring to this relationship? What were the ways that it served me well? It made me a better person. And what are the things about this relationship that I didn't appreciate, didn't enjoy, that I want to make sure I don't replicate in the future? I don't want to relive these cycles.
Yeah.
And then maybe being open to another relationship at some point in time, right? Rebound relationships could be healthy, as long as you're not using it to escape unresolved feelings, those lingering attachment injuries, or using it to kind of replace the end of the previous relationship. And then I'll also just note that finally, if your breakup does involve children, or you're going through a divorce, that it might be a really good time to focus your energy on co-parenting and what that is going to look like. Because we know for kids to, weather through a divorce effectively and live in a divorced family post actual divorce, the relationship, the nature of the co-parenting is crucial. It's, the research says that's the number one thing that's going to impact how much affected the kids are by the divorce. So putting your energy there, how can I have a good co-parenting relationship with my partner, is, a good place to try to focus.
So if you're watching and observing this conversation that Lauren and I are having, or you are actively engaged in the comment section below, and have experienced a breakup, on the verge of a breakup, know someone that is going through a breakup, you don't have to do it alone. There is help for you, especially if you're really struggling and need someone to talk to. There are a couple of options out there, and you can always, you have your friends and family, but if you're wanting to talk with a professional, you can always check in with Military One Source. Military One Source offers free non-medical counseling to address things that you might be experiencing as you're going through a breakup, or if you're just trying to get back to yourself. With that non-medical counseling, you're able to get up to 12 sessions per issue. And so that can be with that licensed clinical professional, whether it's over the phone via a secure video platform. If you want to use the live chat function, that's also an option for you. Or you can meet with that person face-to-face in person, and you can connect with a Military One Source non-medical counselor by going to the Military One Source website and initiating a live chat, or calling 1-800-342-9647. You can also receive free counseling through the Military and Family Life Counseling Program, also known as our MFLAGs. We have MFLAGs positioned around the world to provide face-to-face support to you. Also, you can use that support via a secure video conferencing platform as well. If you want to find out if there's an MFLAG close to you or nearby, you can always call Military One Source, or you can visit your family service center. And also mentioning family service centers, it depends on which installation that you're at, but there are also counseling services at your family service center or within the behavioral health counseling setting environment at your local MTF or military treatment facility. It really just depends on where you're at, but I want you to know that you have options. You can always start with Military One Source. And again, that number is 1-800-342-9647 to talk with a counselor as you're navigating your way through a breakup. Lauren, did you have anything else to add?
I think it's, awesome just to list all those resources. And what it really drives home for me is there are so many people who want to be able to help service members if they do find themselves in this position of, of just needing somebody to talk to, and they don't feel like they have that readily accessible within their circle right now. So, certainly, I hope that resonates with folks today, is that there's just this vast network of folks that do want to help and are here to. And then, just in follow up, my team, the Human Performance Resources by CHAMP team, has some great resources. We've posted a bunch of them in the chat box today, particularly one on getting through a breakup with resilience, but also some on coping with infidelity, navigating divorce, and co-parenting, and a range of resources just about healthy relationship skills, right? So we have some about attachment injuries and what does the research say about what makes a healthy, good, long-term, satisfying relationship. You can find all of that at hprc-online.org. Other than that, I'm just grateful to be here today with you, Kelly. Thank you so much for chatting with me, and thank you to Military OneSource.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you to your team for your commitment to the relationship campaign with military community support programs. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we hope you have a great day.